Ryan, thanks a lot for joining me here today on Blue Note.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me, Carl.
Good to see you. Well, you and I have just gotten back from a trip where we spent a lot of time talking about payments, talking about innovation, talking about what's happening in the world of banking more broadly. On the concept of payments, I mean, you're from Visa, and this is something we jointly think about a lot every day. What are you seeing or what are we seeing in the displacement of cash specifically, and why is that really important in the payment space?
Yeah, I mean, I think we find ourselves working in a space that has never been more dynamic and interesting as it is right now, meaning payments. And cash is something that, frankly, for years that has always been Visa's biggest competitor. A lot of people don't realize that, but it is our focus, and we see cash on the demise. However, right now there's $7.7 trillion in cash, which is more now in the world than there was when we went public in 2008, but it is on the demise. If you look around the Asia Pacific region as we define it, Australia is doing exceptionally well in terms of going after cash, and I think it's probably largely due to the ubiquity of contactless.
And that's a really joint investment between Visa, even MasterCard, and the banks to get that out and get that functionality present and happening for consumers and merchants.
It really is. It's the envy of the world, and all parties worked very well together to make that happen. It's been very good for the economy as well.
Yeah, and we heard a lot, and frankly, a lot of the discussion around credit cards in that industry and payments more generally leads to discussion about the demise of the credit card. Yeah. And do you think that's happening, or what are we seeing in that space? I mean, as a major credit card issuer here in Australia, ANZ clearly has an interest, as does Visa.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I mean, there's a few things on that, right? A lot of people ask that question. The credit card has been around since for 60 years when Visa rolled out the first credit card. It was never anticipated that piece of plastic was going to, always be the vehicle. It was all about the digitizing money, and it just so happens that was a beautifully elegant vehicle. It's the best mobile device that's out there. It's weatherproof. You don't have to plug it in.
That's right.
However, we find ourselves right now in a fascinating period where, with the advent of the true smartphone in 2007, mobile banking was born. And now you have this proliferation of new ways to pay and new choices. There's more choices out there. Right now we have 3 billion credit cards out there. With the proliferation of mobile devices and the digital economy, we see that going from 3 billion to 30 billion devices, and we see it going from 44 million locations of acceptance to 400 million locations.
Because every single merchant is now going to be taking credit cards, be it on their phone or some other...
Multiple different ways, right? We call it the Internet of Things.
Yeah, and it's interesting as well, because we saw a lot of fintechs and what they're offering, how many of them are playing in the payment space. But it's interesting that some of them are actually also reverting back to physical plastic because it's a form factor that customers are familiar with and actually works for them.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. There's somewhere around, they say, 15,000 fintechs out there. There's about 400 payment facilitators out there. We're working very closely with our biggest clients to figure out who are the right fintech partners to partner with. We have our innovation centers. We spent 2 days in London with all of you, and we spent 2 days in our innovation center in San Francisco, kind of delving deep into some of these meaty topics like open banking, for example.
Yeah, and so open banking is a really interesting one and is actually enabling a lot of potential innovation. Certainly the fintechs are pretty excited about this and being able to get access to the data that's going to enable them to solve customer problems. As you see that progressing, what do you think is the key in this sort of open banking space where we're competing not only against other banks, but certainly about these really nimble, agile fintechs? Where do you see the leaders going?
I think it's one of these these situations where it's starting out as regulation, right? What we're seeing in Europe is the banks have started out by making it sort of a compliance exercise, but they're seeing it as an opportunity, though, moving forward to maybe diversify that customer value proposition for their clients, to make the relationship with the bank even more full by using data from other sources to provide additional services that customers need. It's about putting the customer in the center and saying, what does this customer need?
Yeah, and I think the ones, at least from my perspective, the ones that I saw sort of leading on this were the ones thinking about open banking not just as a compliance requirement, but thinking about how do we use this as a catalyst to really supercharge our digital propositions, our customer engagement, our offerings for the customers that they've got and serve every day. Ryan, I just wanted to thank you for joining me today on Blue Notes. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Carl.